morning, everybody. Welcome to Immortal Gaming. This is me again, Marvin, and we're now here for another video for Ragnarok Origin. And this hour, we're going to be looking at the skills of the Royal Guard. First and foremost, thank you to Acreon for featuring this video. We're going to be watching the video and looking at it at a more organized matter because we're going to look at the skills first. Then we'll be looking at the Nexus and the Nebula path. Okay, so first, of course, we are all excited about the new jobs. At last, we're gonna have something different in the global server. So here it is. We're going to look at the Royal Guards first. Okay, so it is this one. All right, so we're watching the video of Acreon. So the first one here is the builds. Okay, there are two builds for the Royal Guards. The first one is the War Madness build. The second one is the Royal Defense build. So of course, very obvious. The War Madness is for DPS. The Royal Defense is for tank. And at the same time, support and CC. Okay, so let's look at the War Madness first. We have here the War Gods form. The Royal Guards are devote themselves fully to battle and will no longer gain oath points. So there are two kinds of gauge that the Royal Guards gain. So the first one is the fighting spirit point, and the second one is the oath point. So the fighting spirit, it will be used both on War Madness and Royal Defense build, because on Royal Defense build, you can switch posture. We'll talk about that later. The second one is the Oath points. Okay, the Oath points, you get Oath points whenever you take damage. Okay, you gain Fighting Spirit whenever you deal damage. Okay, so each 1 point of Fighting Spirit will be increasing your crit by 1 point. Okay, so we now know, we can now be sure that the crit does play a role still in the Royal Guard, same as the Paladin. Okay, cannot coexist with the Eminent Grace. The Eminent Grace is the counterpart for the Royal Defense build. Okay, so the first one here is the Overbrand. Draws a Blood Cross, causing 1480% physical damage to the target, and you apply a debuff called Overbrand. So when the enemy has Overbrand, those enemies will take 40% increased damage taken from Royal Guards. Okay, not from you alone, but for all Royal Guards. The next one is the Moon Slasher. It is an AoE damage for the front, and you gain spirit points with it also. But the good thing here is that when you do normal attack, we all know that the sacrifice does normal attack, and you have 8% chance to automatically trigger Moon Slash, and Moon Slash causes 1600% physical damage to the enemies. So this is quite good, right? It is going the right path. Okay, auto procs after consuming this one is Divine Presence. Okay, it is the burst of the Royal Guards, is an AoE burst. Okay, so when you get 100 fighting spirit points, you now leap into the sky and fall with the damage 1920% non-attribute physical damage to the enemy, and knocks it away 1.5 seconds or 1.5 meters. I'm not sure. Release after the skill, the Royal Guard's fighting spirit value acquisition is increased. For the full throttle, you gain additional 100% damage. So the full throttle here is, I think it's gonna be different when it gets translated into global, but it says full throttle here. It is different from the full throttle of all of the other third job classes. And aside from that, I don't see any full throttle. The original full throttle wherein you get to buff all of the things that you need to buff on your character. There's no full throttle here in the Royal Guard. Okay, the full throttle is different. It's a buff. Okay, this is the buff. Full throttle. The physical attack of the Royal Guard is increased by 40%. Alright, so additional 40% increased physical attack. Each attack triggers full throttle. So gaining additional 4 fighting spirit points, adding 1,150% physical damage, and this can crit. So aside from the auto attack, aside from the Moon Slasher auto proc, you have now the full throttle. Now, there are bad sides here, okay? This is where it gets really, it makes me uninterested with the auto attack build or the damage build of the Royal Guard. So, it can crit, yes, but the full throttle only lasts for 5 seconds. What? 5 seconds? Isn't that familiar? Just like the sacrifice, 5 seconds, but you can prolong the duration of the sacrifice, but it depends on your weapon. I do believe that we have a new weapon for the Royal Guards. Now, this is the bad side. It cannot coexist with life-threatening attacks, means that the damaging, self-damaging attacks that you deal. That is where it gets, I don't know, bad. I think that this is my own perception, because you cannot use the full throttle together with sacrifice. So it's either you use sacrifice or full throttle. That's it. So that means you will only use sacrifice on the other build, which is the Royal Defense build. We'll talk about that later, but it will be different here. Full throttle will now be used because it can also deal critical hit, and I do believe this is not forced neutral. So you can easily change the attribute of your attacks. But the cooldown, look at the cooldown. The cooldown is 10 seconds. And you can only use full throttle for 5 seconds. What? Okay. So next would be Roar. The Royal Guard releases all control. So this is cleanse and knocks back surrounding enemies. Next, Swift Glide is the movement skill of the Royal Guard. Okay. So he tests all of the skills here. This is the Spear Quicken again, still. I'm so sad that you don't have a full throttle skill wherein you just use one skill and then you'll buff everything. But this is on test server, so maybe they will change it still on the global server and on the Taiwan server. But yeah, this is the overbrand. So the overbrand, you use it on auto, I think, so that you could deal more damage to the enemy that was hit by overbrand. Moon Slasher, okay, this is the auto proc. It's not advisable for you to use it on auto because there is an auto proc there, then that's the time that you use it, okay? Next, okay, this is the auto attack. So is he using the auto attack now? It would have been better if he doesn't have the Aether Orc Archer card equipped. But look at this. This is he already has Terminal Wing here. So we should be expecting high numbers here. But I'm not sure if we're getting high numbers at all. Can you remember when we tested first the Spear build? We felt that it was lackluster, but it seems like we only needed the right combo, the right Nexus build so that it could work perfectly. So maybe it's the same with this one, but I'm also not impressed with this one. Okay, it would have been better if you could use the full throttle together with the sacrifice, but you're gonna cast a lot of things. You're gonna cast sacrifice, you're gonna cast full throttle, so there are less time for you to do your auto attacks. But yep, so this one is the second build. This is the Royal Defense build. Okay, so you get to have Pious Oath. Oh, by the way, the Pious Oath is a passive so that you could ride your Royal Griffins. So I do believe that in terms of the War Madness build, I think this is still needed. Okay, you gain 2 oath points when you receive damage, and you gain fighting spirit points when you cause damage. Okay, aside from the skills. Okay, we have here the Eminent Grace. This is what I've been talking about a while ago, wherein you can switch stance between the fighting stance and the combat stance. It's still not sure here because it is just merely a translation. Some things can be wrong here in terms of translation, but it just says here that you gain a lot of defensive stats when you are not on the combat posture. It's not sure though, because it only says here either the fighting posture or the combat posture. And I was like, isn't it the same, fighting and combat posture? But it says here, when you are on fighting posture, you convert oath points into fighting spirit points and immediately cause 1200% physical damage, and you gain 30% increased movement speed. But in combat posture, I'm not sure if it's the same or it's different. When you use combat posture, the Royal Guard cannot obtain oath points, okay? The rate of obtaining fighting spirit points is increased by 20%, and the reduction, physical and magic damage reduction, is increased by 50%. That's a lot. 50% increased physical damage and magic damage reduction. Truly a tank build, okay? So it has 8 seconds cooldown. Okay, it says here, after switching to combat stance, Shield Suppression, Earth Drive, and King's Guardian and Final Domain, which are all on the Royal Defense skill build, will now be changed into a different skill. It will be a combat skill, okay? So it has 8-second cooldown, so you can use Eminent Grace from time to time just to switch from being in a fighting posture or a combat posture, if that's correct. Okay, so use the shield to suppress an enemy. You gain 5 oath points, taunt the target, and cause 1040% damage. So this set of skills cannot crit, okay? So the set of skills that can only crit are on the War Madness build. But this one, it's just based on provoking the enemy, stunning them, immobilizing them, etc. Okay, so the damage cost to you by enemies is reduced, okay, up to 60%. So the computation is constitution. The constitution is vitality. Okay, physic is strength. So it's vitality divided by strength plus 500. So if you have a lot more strength than vitality, you gain less damage reduction here. Okay, so you have to have more vitality. Okay, so but it lasts only 2 seconds. If you have used the Eminent Grace and you changed into a combat posture, the shield suppression now becomes different. It will now be called Precise Piercing. So it thrusts enemies with your spear, and you give them the debuff Piercing. I do believe that this increases your ignore defense capabilities. I'm not sure. There's no explanation on the piercing effect. Okay, so next would be the Earth Drive. Okay, use the shield to slam the ground to trigger a shockwave. You gain 15 oath points. That's a lot, right? Each shockwave will cause 460% damage to the enemy in front. Okay, you reduce its attack speed and movement speed. And when you hit the enemy, you gain a shield that is equivalent to 10% of physical and magic defense, and addition of physical defense, magic defense multiplied by 200% shield value. Okay, so when you use again the Eminent Grace, you change posture into combat posture. This will now be called Holy Lance Assault. You dash towards the enemy and you stun it. That's it. Okay, so next would be the King's Guardian. The Royal Guards and teammates will receive reduced damage from enemies in the direction in front of the Royal Guard. Okay, so you cannot stack this. That's the meaning of superimposable. You cannot stack it. So the Royal Guards will receive reduced damage value. I think this one is up to 60% reduction on damage. And the damage reduction value for teammates is half of what you have on the Royal Guards. So in addition, the Royal Guards will automatically stab forward each time they receive damage. Okay, they will counter with a built-in interval of 1 second, causing 1840% physical damage and restoring 5% of their health. and the interval is only 1 second. Oh, this is gonna be so tanky on PvP. Imagine the reduction of damage, plus dealing damage to the Royal Guards will get you countered, and at the same time, with a high damage, 1,840% damage, and heals them by 5% of their HP. Oh my goodness. This is so deadly on high divine powered characters. Okay, no other skills can be used during the King's Guardian. Oh, that's the downside. You cannot use other skills. But if you get damaged, you counter the enemy. Okay, so when you use this on combat stance, the form of this skill will be changed. That's it? Okay, that's it. So next would be the burst version on the Royal Defense build. So it's called Final Domain. Okay, the Final Domain, it can only be used when you reach 100 oath value. Oh my goodness, you have to be hit a lot of times, and you have to cast Shield Suppression and Earth Drive a lot of times for you to use the Final Domain. Okay, so it lasts for 7 seconds. The physical and magic damage bonus of friendly parties in the domain is increased by 20%. The physical damage received and the physical damage reduction is reduced. So there's a computation here. I'm not sure. I think this is damage over time. So you will get hit per second, I think. When you activate, you'll get damaged per second, I think 30%. Okay. So enemies that are not in friendly guard area will reduce the damage caused to friendly parties in the area. So if the enemies are in long range battle formation, so they will deal less damage to the party members that are in the Final Domain. Okay, after switching to fighting stance, unleash your courage Final Domain instead. So what does that mean? It did not even say. Okay, so you can only use this every 20 seconds. So aside from the King's Guardian, you have the Final Domain, and it's gonna bring a lot of damage reduction and increased damage bonus to the party members. I think in terms of clashes, the Royal Guards are gonna be so important now. If you don't have a Royal Guard when you clash the enemy, it will be a huge disadvantage for your guild or for your party, even on the Dimension Drill. So I think this one is needed. It's a huge advantage if you have at least one Royal Guard in your position. Okay, so that's the Shield Suppression, yada 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 yada. It slows, it stuns, it provokes on each of the skills. And this is the King's Guardian. As we have already seen, you cannot cast any skill on it while doing it, but you have a buff, okay, a damage reduction buff for all allies in the area. Okay, he tests the Final Domain. This is the damage over time. I think that's the damage over time when you use the Final Domain, and it only lasts 7 seconds, sadly. Okay, so Eminent Grace, you now change into combat stance. So you now have a different type of skills here. Okay, so I do believe he's gonna test the sacrifice together with the combat stance here, but it's underwhelming in terms of DPS, and it should be, in my opinion, it should be. Remember when it was all Paladin rushing towards on the Odin Season 1? Remember that? It is because before, the Paladin has damage, it has tank capabilities, and it has movement speed. So everything that you would need for a character, the Paladin has it. So now they're kind of balancing the roles of the third jobs in such a way that, you know, the Rune Knights will now be basically DPS, and the Royal Guards will now be tanking and supporting the party members. Alright, so this is for the skill sets, trials, etc. Okay, now as you can see here, he's using the sacrifice together with all of the other skills. Okay, but I do believe this one still produces even less DPS than the War Madness build, which should be the case. Okay, which should be the case. So War Madness build is the way to go if you're in your DPS mode for the Royal Guard. So next would be the Nexus. Okay, we'll now transfer to the Nexus job talents. So this one is the Unstoppable, okay, special skill or special talent. Enemies hit by shield suppression and earth drive will have their physic and agility. So that's the strength and agility reduced by 20%. Enemies hit by precision pierce, which is the precision pierce is the shield suppression version of combat stance. Okay, it will and Holy Lance is for the Earth Drive. Will have their strength and luck this time reduced by 20%. Okay, so it lasts for 20 seconds. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Absolute Realm. Okay, after turning on the King's Guardian, the movement speed of teammates within 5 meters will be increased by 5%. Okay, movement speed, okay, of enemies will be reduced. Okay, so there's a reduction on enemies and they can be taken out of the area. What does that mean? Okay, next would be Fighting Fever. Okay, each time Moonslasher is released, the damage of normal attacks is increased by 20% for 2 seconds. This is good. Okay, this is good. Okay, for the DPS build. So at last, something for PvE that can be used for PvE too. Next would be the Immortal Will. Attacking an enemy with a domination mark has a 10% chance of recovering 2% health. Okay, you can now heal and you can use this every 1.5 seconds. What is a domination mark? I'm not sure. It's a translation, a difference in translation. Maybe it's with the overbrand. I'm not sure. I think it's an overbrand debuff. It's the same as the overbrand debuff. So next would be Unyielding. Okay, when the blood volume drops or the HP drops below 40%, there is a 5% chance of reducing the damage by 30% when receiving damage. Okay. Next is Aegis. Okay, Divine Shield. Every time you get a shield, you get 15% and 15% physical damage bonus and 10% damage reduction. This is great. Okay, this is great. Okay, to assist your War Madness build because it's only available on Divine. The Divine Shield is only available on your War Madness build. Okay, that's right. Next, let's now go to the Nebula. Okay, we have the Nebula here. I think this is for War Madness. Okay, War Madness. On level 20, each time you hit a critical, you will gain an additional 1 fighting spirit. Okay, you can gain a lot of fighting spirits. So next, when the fighting spirit reaches 50 or above, you will receive 20% physical attack bonus. Oh, that's nice. Physical attack, 20% physical attack. Not as high as the Guillotine Cross, which increases to 200%, but I'll take it. After releasing the Divine Presence, okay, Divine Presence, it's the AoE burst of the War Madness build. The physical damage of the Royal Guard is increased by 30%, and the critical hit damage is increased by 10% for only 2 seconds. Every time Divine Presence hits an enemy, it will increase by an additional 0.5 seconds. Okay, so it can get increased by a lot, up to 7 seconds. Okay, that's good for huge enemy stack. But if you are hitting only one enemy, then it's just 2.5 seconds increase. Okay, next, this is level. I think this is level 80. After killing target, 10% health will be restored. All right, on level 80. Okay, that's the change. That's level 80. Oh my goodness, you need to buff this. Each point of fighting spirit increases movement speed by 2%. So that's 20% increased movement speed. And that's level 100, guys. That's level 100. Each point of fighting spirit. Okay. I think these are all underwhelming. In my opinion, are really underwhelming. Okay, let's change to the Royal Defense build. Okay. So you get damage reductions here. After, that's level 20, right? After entering defensive posture or fighting posture, you will gain 4 oath points or 5 spirit points every second for 5 seconds. That's 25. Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay, that is good. So basically, I do believe that they are the Royal Guards in terms of PvE is not going to be that good, but on PvP they are game breaking. They are really game breaking. You need Royal Guards in your guilds. Okay, in defensive posture, this is level 40. Each point of oath value increases damage reduction by 0.2%. And in fighting posture, each point of fighting spirit will increase physical attack by 0.2%. That's 20% on each, either damage reduction or physical attack. Okay, that's all right. If you're because I do believe that you will be using the defense. The defense. I do believe that you'll be using the in the royal defense build on grinding, if not, right? Okay. So next is level 60. After releasing Final Domain, increase physical and magic defense by 20% for 5 seconds. That's a lot. That's a lot more. You are gonna be so tanky here. Oh my goodness. So much tankiness, and a lot of people are now needing more physical defense and magic defense. Ignore. So this one is level 80. After entering defensive posture, 40% of HP will be restored, and after entering the combat posture, the immune effect, control effect will be obtained. So you will now get immunity to control effects for 5 seconds. That's nice. 5 seconds is a lot of time. That's a long time. So this is nice. I'm really liking the defense, royal defense build. All of the royal defense build on this royal guard. Oh my goodness, it's gonna be unkillable when the oath value is higher than 50. Okay, the damage received from attacks is reduced by 5%. When the fighting spirit value is higher than 50, 3% of health is restored each time the attack is received. Every time that you receive damage, and the cooldown is 1 second. That's nice. It's still nice for level 100. That's still nice. Okay, so this is it for the skills, the Nebula, and the Nexus engine of the Royal Guard. What do you think about this? I do believe that they are going for the right path for the Royal Guards as compared with the Paladin, wherein it has everything, right? Now the Royal Guard will have, like, more on the defensive side, which should be the case, but it's gonna be, ineffective for PvE. But on PvP, they sure are, wow, they will surely, change the battle and change the tide on some of the cases because of their skills and their capabilities, or defensive and support capabilities. Anyway, that's it. Thank you everybody for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe. If you happen to like this video, please do leave a like, share this to your friends, and click that bell notification button to get notified every time I upload a new video, start a new stream, or a new content. That's it. See you again on the next video. Bye-bye. Now I found you.